Hello, everyone. Today we are talking about breathing and how to work with your home so that you can breathe. The reason for bringing up this topic is because a lot of what is going on in the world is around breathing. It's like a theme if you think about it. We are dealing with a pandemic of a virus that a lot of people don't get symptoms, but when people do get symptoms, one of the most common symptoms is shortness of breath. And we're also having demonstrations and protests where people are holding signs, they're saying, I can't breathe. And then there's other people protesting that they're being asked to wear masks, and they say, when I wear a mask, I can't breathe. And so I thought it would be good to do a lesson about breathing and how that relates to Feng Shui. So there's actually two life areas that are connected to breathing in Feng Shui through the metal element, but one life area more than the other. So the life areas are life area 6, which is helpful people, spiritual life, and travel, and life area 7, which is children, creativity, and fun. They are both connected to the metal element, and the organs associated with the metal element are the large intestine and the lungs. And so both life areas represent, in a way, the two organs, the large intestine and the lungs. But life area number 6, helpful people, spiritual life, and travel, is more symbolically connected with the large intestine. And life area number 7, children, creativity, and fun, is more symbolically connected with the lungs. And so there are other associations of the metal element is also the skin is associated with the metal element. The emotions, when you have balance in the metal element, you feel nostalgia when you think about the past, especially losses that you have had in the past. When your metal element is hypo, you're going to feel grief, and when it is hyper, you're going to feel cynicism. In Feng Shui, as in Chinese medicine, we don't believe that you can ever get over grief. So people telling somebody else, you just have to get over it. You just have to get over it and keep going. It does not work like that. You have to transmute grief into nostalgia. And nostalgia is that bittersweet feeling that you have when you think about the past. For example, my husband and I had a cat called Pichagi, who was a short-haired tabby, beautiful, gorgeous, great personality. He was with us 19 and a half years, and he died of old age. And the last couple of weeks, and especially the last few days of his life, he was very weak. He could hardly move. He stopped eating at some point, and he stopped drinking. And it was very, very sad. So after he passed on, for a long time, whenever we thought about him, our eyes would fill with tears because we were thinking about how fragile he was near the end and how difficult things were for him. And as time went on, at some point, we started, whenever we thought of Pichagi, we stopped thinking about Pichagi in his last 2 weeks. And we started getting mental image pictures of Pichagi in all the different stages of his life. When he was a kitten, when he was a young cat, all the things he did, how funny he was. He liked to play pranks, I think, if you can believe that. Like, for example, when I was washing dishes, he would come very, very slowly, very stealthily, and nip me on the back of my knee, and that would make my knees buckle, right? And then he would go in, and my kids found some article or some video about how cats and dogs actually do laugh. We just can't hear them. But it always seemed to me that after he did that, he was laughing, like he would drop his jaw. And so in the life of sharing our life with this cat for 19 and a half years, there's hundreds of moments like that. And all those moments, over time, they overpower the moments of suffering that you had in the last 2 weeks when he was dying. And in every relationship that we have, you have to go through that transmuting process. You're never going to feel happy you lost your grandmother. That's impossible. You're always going to miss her, right? And so there's no getting over that. Your emotions are not going to change. They have to transmute. You don't get over them. You transform them into something else. It's like that saying that energy It's not created or destroyed, it's only transformed. It's sort of like that with this. The grief is not going to be destroyed. You're not going to get over it. You're not going to erase it. It has to transform and transmute into something else, which is that nostalgia, the bittersweet feeling that you get when you look at the past, when you think about the past. And so that is when you're balanced. Now, when you are hyper in the metal element, you get cynicism, where you don't trust anybody, where nothing matters. Like existentialism would be one example of being hyper in the metal element. And so you have to um, you have to know these things, because otherwise, sometimes we take things that are problems and we interpret them as qualities. For example, people say, I don't trust anybody. And they say it like it's a virtue, like they're so special, because they're so shrewd, because they're so alert and so woke. They don't trust anybody. Trusting is part of our energetic makeup. That doesn't mean you have to be naive or gullible. But when you get to that cynicism, then there's problems, and you have to recognize that is a problem, not something to be proud of. In Feng Shui, breathing is associated obviously with the lungs, with the nose, with the skin, and also it is associated with children, right? With children, creativity, and fun. And so this has to do with descendants. For example, if you have grandchildren already, this is the area for grandchildren. If you are a teacher, for example, especially an art teacher, this life area is going to be very strong for you, because you're working towards serving the future generation. So there's two aspects to this life area. One is serving the future generations and the joy you get from that. I knew a lady who was a therapist, a psychotherapist, and she was getting a little bit bogged down at some point, with listening to everybody's problems for over 8 hours a day and then doing paperwork. And her therapist recommended that she make friends with somebody who had a 2-year-old and get together at least once a week and play with a 2-year-old. And that was going to be the best therapy for her. Because when you're serving little ones, there's a lot of joy you get back from being around them, because they're so cute, right? And the other aspect of this life area is receiving enjoyment. For example, going to a spa would fit into this life area. And also, of course, is creativity. So whenever you're producing art, it's part of this life area. But we don't see producing art as productive work in a way, but as inspiration, right? Of course, if you're a painter, for example, your paint is not going to get done by itself. Your ideas are not going to be put on the paper or the canvas unless you work at it, right? But the best art, all the artists tell you, visual artists, writers, movie makers, any type of artists would tell you that the best work was done when they felt like they were being guided, like their hand was being guided as it moved the brush. Like some writers say they feel like they're just taking dictation. There's a woman poet, I can't recall her name right now, but she talks about how poems come through the air, and if she's not ready to catch them, they move along looking for another poet. And sometimes she catches them by the tail, and she has to write the poem backwards from the last line to the first. There's this idea of receiving. Receiving is a huge component of this life area. If you think about it, for a child, when a baby is born, the first thing you want that child to do is to take that first breath. And that first breath is what signals being alive. The baby is alive. The baby took a breath. The baby is alive. We mark the moment of the first breath as the first instant where the baby can live by himself without being in the belly of the mother. You have this association of breath with life. So when people are saying, I can't breathe, they're saying, I can't live. So when people are afraid of the coronavirus, and they're afraid they're not going to be able to breathe, they're not afraid they're not going to be able to live. Some people can have extended lung problems even after they no longer have the coronavirus. So the coronavirus is definitely a virus that attacks the metal element. It's very much associated with breathing. It's very much associated with the lungs. So the significance for this, the symbolic significance of the world, is there something going on with the world, that the world was in grief? How you interpret this is going to depend on how you see the world. So a lot of my friends that are super, that are very interested in environmental issues, they're saying, well, the world is grieving because so much pollution was overwhelming the planet, and then the planet all of a sudden said, okay, stop, you have to stop. And in a short time, we're seeing certain ecosystems coming back because the action of human is not as intense as it used to be. Other people are saying, people who are more spiritual, they're saying our consumerism, our materialistic lifestyle, we're just focusing on buying, 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 spending, 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 and never going within, just looking for satisfaction from external things and never going within. That is what's causing the grief, and then these things are happening. And other people, they might put the cause of this grief in other problems. They might say, this is caused by immigration. Other people might say, this is caused by automation. This is caused by the loss of jobs, or this is caused by globalization. And people will try to find a culprit for this. Like, this is the reason this is happening. But the common denominator of everything that is a problem for us right now is this phrase, I can't breathe. I really can't breathe. Someone might say, I can't breathe because they are dealing with the coronavirus. Somebody else says, I can't breathe because they feel their ethnicity or their race has been suppressed, and people have literally died saying, I can't breathe. And other people are saying, I'm not going to put on a mask because I can't breathe. This common denominator is breath, and what is producing the breath is the lungs. And the thing that our lungs breathe is oxygen, and oxygen is created by trees. Now, the interesting connection here is if you look at the Bagua map, right, you have in the middle portion of the Bagua map, to the right, when you're looking at it from the outside of the home on the front, to the right, you have children, creativity, and fun, and to the left, you have health, family, and community. So on the left side, health, family, and community, the symbol there is the tree, the living, healthy forest. So the tree is producing this oxygen that you breathe with your lungs, metal element in children, creativity, and fun. And so there is a connection, right? And so the trees are giving this thing for us for free so that we can have life and take it in. One of the things that I always recommend is that if you can, you create a relationship with a tree, a friendship with a tree, like you have a tree in your property, go sit down under that tree often. If you don't have a tree in your property, maybe if you live in a subdivision or condominium, maybe there's a park where there's trees, and then you can go and kind of adopt a tree, or go to a city park and buy a tree. Because there's an energetic connections. Humans are the connectors of heaven to earth, and trees are the connectors of the earth towards heaven. And we have to try that balance, right, between being productive and receiving and enjoying. Life number 3, which is health, family, and community, that has to do with ancestors. Life number 7, children, creativity, and fun, that has to do with descendants. But it's all the same line, right? The line that comes from our ancestors towards our descendants. One reason we enjoy all of the things that we enjoy today is because of all the work our ancestors did, and not just our personal ancestors, but all of the ancestors of humanity. Because of the discoveries they made many years ago, we enjoy so many conveniences today. And these conveniences are shared between all of humanity. There's somebody discovers electricity, then everybody starts using electricity. Somebody develops the internet, and people in all countries of the world are using the internet. The force, the strength, the work of all the ancestors of humanity is cumulative, and it allows us to have a better life today. What I suggest that you do, 2 suggestions for you regarding children, creativity, and fun. One of them is that you have something whimsical in your home that is yours. For example, you may have toys in your home that you kept from when your kids were little, and then they went and had their own home, so you keep their toys, right? But I also recommend that you have one thing that is kind of like a toy, but that you got for yourself. for your inner child, something that you would have loved as a child and something that you really love today. And this includes, you can have some decoration that is kind of crazy or whimsical. Sometimes when I do consultations, people will show me the picture if we're doing long distance. When I still did consultations in homes, they will show me around. And they may have this one ornament or this figurine that is really strange, different, bizarre. And then they would ask me, where can I put this? I just don't know where to put it. I love it, but I don't know where to put it. So you can put that in the part of your home that is children, creativity, and fun. But of course, it has to match the function of the room, right? If you have your master bedroom there, then maybe it's not such a good idea to put the item depending on what it is. But have something in your home that you really, really like in kind of a childish way. That's the one thing. The other thing is that you practice breathing. There's different ways to breathe, and you could be doing a lot of one particular type of breathing, and that neglects other types of breathing. For example, you could be going to do like Zumba or aerobics step every day, and that challenges your lungs and your heart, right? And you start breathing deeply, and that strengthens your hearts and your lungs. But when you're working out and you're getting those endorphins and that all the chemicals surging through your body, the kind of breathing that you do when you're working out is kind of shallow breathing. So you also need to do something that is like yoga or Tai Chi or Pilates. We are doing this soft, gentle breathing where you're actually filling up your lungs, taking the breath into your belly, and then doing the reverse action, emptying the lungs and bringing your belly back towards your belly button. So you really empty your lungs of all the air. And then there's another type of breathing that is like rhythmic breathing, where you, for example, do a movement and you inhale as you do one part of the movement and you exhale as another part of the movement. You can do this when you're practicing Qigong. And there's other practices where you do similar things, but you do breath work where you're actually doing this faster. So, for example, one exercise that we do, the children and I, is you bring your arms. Let me move this a little. So you move your arms here, and then you inhale here and exhale here. And you can find out, if it works better for you to exhale through the mouth or exhale through the nose, right? And so that is one. Another one is, for example, you bring your hands, you exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. And so I'm just sharing with you some of the things that we do. I recommend that you do your own research and you find out what kind of breathing would be better for you. But I think right now we should all be working our lungs because we have a virus, we had a pandemic that attacks the lungs. So we should all be working towards strengthening our lungs and looking for different kinds of breathing. So the breathing that comes from doing strenuous exercise that really agitates you. That's one type of breathing. The really deep kind of breathing that you would do during meditation, Tai Chi, or yoga is another type of breathing. And this rhythmic breathing that I was telling you about. So, like when you do one part of the exercise, you inhale, the other one you exhale. So, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, where you are doing something with the movement, right? So, having something that is really whimsical, something that makes your inner child light up in your home. If you still have children in your home, you probably have enough toys. You don't need to bring in more toys. But if you don't have any children, or if your children are adults, or if they have left, then it's really a nice thing to get yourself something that really makes your inner child happy. And you can put it in, if you have a guest room, that can be your guest room. If you have an office, you can put it in the office. You can put it in the art room. You can put it in the midpoint in the home, which is the half point of the right wall when you see the home from the front. That's the midpoint for children, creativity, and fun. And in this way, you can honor the times. You can honor this time. So much of our suffering, so much of our grief comes from things we experienced as children that hurt us in some way. When I have to clear emotional or mental patterns that come up, I have two people I work with. One of those people is Bill Austin, who does long distance vibrational healing, and he works over like large amounts of patterns that you may have regarding certain issues. And then I also work with another person who's Meredith Harrison McKay, and she does this thing called the Burkle technique that goes directly to your subconscious mind and helps you clear things. It's similar to hypnotherapy, but you are conscious the whole time. And so that's the other person I work with to release these things. You know, things come up to be healed, and you work on them to release them. Every time you are going through something emotional, don't think about this. This is like a problem that's bringing me down. But no, this is something that is coming up, is giving me the opportunity to release it. So, one of the things my friend Meredith has shared with me is that when she's working with her clients, something that you may have thought was not a huge thing for a child comes up as a huge source of grief for that child. For example, in somebody was in a car with their family and they were going to the beach, and the the little girl had the window open, trying to feel the breeze, like pretending she's a dog, and she had a doll, and the doll flew through the air. And then the parents, they tried to look for it. They stopped the car, they went looking for it, but they could never find the doll. And so for the parents, it's like, okay, she did something we told her not to do, she lost the doll, we'll get her another doll. But for the child, that may be a huge moment of grief that stays with her for the rest of her life. So the things that as adults we tend to minimize can be huge for a child. So we all carry grief from childhood, and this grief sometimes comes up, and it comes up to be clear. I think that this is a great opportunity to work on issues that have to do with the inner child, things that have to do with children, creativity, and fun. So remember to set up every day for something that in Spanish we call ocio. It's OCIO. So ocio is kind of a blend of good laziness, leisure, enjoyment, and receiving. And so it's a time for you to just chill and do nothing. Or if you're going to do something where you receive, like a massage, a facial, something like that. I don't know if we can do this right now, unless it's from a family member, something you really trust and who's really healthy. Maybe during the COVID pandemic, there's some things that maybe you can do, like you can go to the massage parlor. It's harder to go get a manicure or a pedicure, but there's a lot of things that you can still do, and it can even be indulging on watching something that is super relaxing on Netflix or Hulu or Prime, right? But give yourself that enjoyment. It is super important to give yourself enjoyment right now, because the usual sources of enjoyment are minimized. We don't have access to all the things that we have on a usual basis. So that's important to remember. And also create a relationship with a tree. There have been so many times when I feel out of sorts, or when I can't make a decision, or something that just feels off. And I just go lie down under my maple tree, and after 10-15 minutes, everything is fine. There's just something magical in the way that we can connect with a tree. And if you believe in energy, if you believe in chi, if you believe in the life force, people who can see the life force say that when you are under a tree, you're actually creating a really good loop of energy with the tree, where you are connecting the energy from heaven to the earth, and then it's coming up from the earth to heaven through the tree. Remember, this is a time to show some tenderness to yourself. There are a lot of challenging things happening in general, and there may be things that are particularly challenging for you and your loved ones. So show yourself love, tenderness, and care. Honor your inner child, and honor the desire and the need that you have as an adult to have fun, to enjoy. We are here to enjoy life. That is my message today. I hope you continue to work to turn your current home into a dream home where you can be happy with the people you love.
This was very interesting.
Uh-huh.
Thank you for doing this.
Oh, good. Sometimes,
I really didn't put together how the virus and grief that we're feeling and everything goes together with the can't breathe.
mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Sometimes reality seems bizarre to me
Mhm.
in that there seems to be a script. you know,
Mhm.
like if you wrote it that way, some people would say that your writing is manipulative, right?
Mhm.
Like it's not realistic, and so
So
many.
this is basically a world issue now,
Yes.
right? The so I'm thinking the earth is going through this grief, right? And we all have to somehow heal it.
Yeah, I think the Earth is going to a grieving process as Gaia, as the entity that is the planet, if you believe in that. I think there's this grief in that things were getting really, really toxic in some areas, so much trash being thrown into the oceans, the landfills growing, and humanity just consuming, right? Just in this
Mhm.
crazy consuming and creating trash, consuming and creating trash. But I also think that humanity, like the planet of humanity, our collective is going through some grief because it seems so many things are disconnected and so many
Mhm.
people are not living according to their values. And a lot of the values that were being sold, say like through the media, right, through commercials and TVs and shows, like for example wanting to look a particular way, so you make yourself miserable because you don't have a particular body type, because you are not as tall as the actress, because you don't have the eye shape, because you are not super fit, because you can't see a six pack. And we're making ourselves miserable in so many ways because um, marketing, in my opinion, is replacing values. And like, we're not getting strong values from other sources because there's not enough of a spiritual connection for a lot of people. They don't
Mhm.
have a strong spiritual connection, a source of wisdom that they can rely on. So their values are being determined by what companies are doing in order to make a buck. And so those values are not really, they're not really identifying with the destiny of the person and with the person's true desires and passion. And I think that's going on. And so and I think there is this collective grief. Thing that I didn't mention before is that the coronavirus is creating a lot of grief. I've been following a number of people who are interviewing those who are in very close contact with the coronavirus. And so these situations, like if you have a relative that has the coronavirus and have to go to the hospital, you can only get to the parking lot
Mhm.
and you have to drop them off in the parking lot. And for some people that I have seen interviewed, that was the last time they saw their loved one.
Mhm.
Next thing they know, they have the ashes, right? And so there's a lot of grief being generated from not being able to say goodbye properly to somebody who's passing on. There's a lot of grief from not being able to process the grief of losing someone through the rituals we're used to, like having the wake, having the funeral, all these things and that we have in our society that are rituals to help us go through these
Mhm.
extremely difficult moments. They're being taken away from a lot of people. A lot of people are having remaining issues, health issues after they have had the illness they have to deal with. A lot of people are having also, not related to COVID-19, but to the lockdown that COVID-19 has produced. A
Mhm.
lot of people are having sorrow from loss of income, from loss of relationships. So there's a lot. It's like the source of the situation is grief, and the situation itself is producing a lot of grief. And I want to propose to you that one of the things, the most beautiful things that you could do for humanity right now is to be happy, healthy, and fulfill yourself. Because I do believe there's a collective consciousness. And when we are happy, when we work for our happiness, when we feel connected to heaven, when we are fulfilling our mission, when we are well, that is going into our matrix, into our collective matrix, and it's helping raise the vibration of humanity. So, right now, it is a duty for every person that can afford to be happy to really work on being happy.